You're live.
So I'm Emma, and I'm from Slytherin.
I'm Kate, and I'm from Gryffindor. Today, we're discussing Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
Okay, so before we get started, why don't we just do a brief overview of the book? Don't spoil anything just yet. We'll spoil stuff in a few minutes.
Okay.
So where does it start?
Okay. It starts off at the Dursleys, as usual, and the Weasleys have come to pick Harry up until school starts. So, after they return to the Weasleys, Harry spends the night, and next day they are going to the Triwizard Cup tournament. Oh, jeez. Quidditch World Cup. I apologize, folks. They're going to the Quidditch World Cup, which they attend with the Diggories. I'm sorry, I'm bad at this.
That's all right.
That's okay.
So Harry gets to spend the rest of the summer with the Weasleys, and then they travel to Hogwarts. And at Hogwarts, everything is a little off. There's a surprise coming, and only certain people know what it is. What ends up being that surprise?
The Triwizard Tournament.
Okay, and what's important about the Triwizard Tournament? How long has it been since they've last held it?
4 years. And I think the reason it's been canceled is because it's very dangerous.
A lot of people have died.
And its contestants are only supposed to be 7th years.
Which means 17 and up. And in this book, Harry is 14.
And somehow, mysteriously, his name is entered in the Goblet of Fire, even though he didn't enter it. The Triwizard Tournament consists of 3 schools competing together: Hogwarts, Beauxbatons, and Durmstrang. Beauxbatons is a French all-girls wizarding school, and Durmstrang is a Scandinavian all-boys school.
Beauxbatons isn't an all girls. Because they have boys that show up at the Yule Ball.
In the book.
In the book, yes. In the book, there's Beauxbaton boys. In the movie, it is only girls, but in the book, it's a mixed school. It's a co-ed school. That's what I wanted to say. But yes, Durmstrang is an all boy. Okay, so jumping back to the beginning of the book, you said that it starts at the Dursleys, but there's this chapter, the very first chapter that's mentioned.
Yes.
Is a very significant chapter. What happens in the chapter? Emma, do you remember? Who do we see in the very first chapter? Who does Harry dream about?
He
Yes.
dreams about the riddles. Now, if you all remember from our discussion about Harry Potter and Chamber of Secrets, the riddles are Voldemort's family, and Voldemort used to be known as Tom Riddle. Well, at the beginning of the book, it's a flashback, and his family is mysteriously murdered. And several years later, on the very night that Harry has this dream, the old gardener goes up to the house because he sees a light in the window and thinks his kid's playing with matches. But it turns out to be Voldemort and his little servants. And when they meet him, they decide to murder him. And after he's been murdered, that is when Harry wakes up from his dream.
What happens? What is the significance of Harry waking up from the dream? What does he remember? What did he get to see in his dream? Do you remember? He saw Voldemort talking
To a snake.
to his snake and hearing that what did Voldemort want to do this coming school year? What was he?
Kill Harry.
Yes. He's going to kill Harry Potter. So as we move forward and we got to go, Harry got to go with the Weasleys to the World Quidditch Cup tournament, we learned about a couple of new ways of getting about. So we've got flu powder from last book. We had the magical flying car from the other book. We've got 2 new ways of getting around. Do you guys remember what they are?
They are port keys and apparating.
Do you want to do port keys? Do you remember?
I'll do wait. I'll do port keys.
You'll do port keys? Okay, so tell us what's a port key?
So port keys are so they can get you places. They are shaped like garbage, and
What's significant about them?
that people think that they're trash and that wizards know what they are.
Yep, so muggles think that they're garbage, but wizards know that they're port keys. But what do you need? What is important about port keys? When can they be used?
I think the book said only when they are active
Yes.
and in order.
Yep, so you have to have, there's a either a timed or a momentary point when the port keys are actually active. The rest of the time they are just garbage. Do you want to do apparating?
Okay. Apparating is a magical form of teleportation. As in the words of Dumbledore, most people vomit the first time they do it.
What's the rules behind apparating?
Well, if I remember correctly, the rule to apparition is you have to be 16 at the youngest in order to apparate.
And you also have to do what?
I believe take the proper training.
And
Pass the test.
yep. So basically, apparating is like having your own car in the wizard world. That's how you get around after you're 16. You learn how to do it, you take the test, and you get approved to apparate to different locations. Who do we meet at the World Quidditch Cup?
We meet the Diggories and Victor Crumb.
What's significant about Victor Crumb? Who's he end up being?
He happens to be the Bulgarian Quidditch seeker.
Mm-hmm. And then when he's at Hogwarts, who does he become?
He becomes a Triwizard champion.
Right. So
Well,
he's
Adra
the
contestant.
he's the contestant from Drumstring. In the books, we also learn about creatures at the World Quidditch Cup that are
Velas and leprechauns.
thank you. Couldn't remember how to pronounce it. So with the Bucks Batten school champion or school candidate,
Fleur de la Cour.
what's significant about Fleur?
Well, what's significant about Fleur de la Cour is that she's part Vela,
Which means that she
is her, which means that her mother was a Vela.
But what can she do then? What happens to all of the different gentlemen in the school when she's around?
Well, she's like a siren, so they become attracted to her.
Okay, so with the Goblet of Fire, what is that? Where is that coming from, the whole title of the book?
Okay. In order to compete in the Triwizard Tournament, the student must be 17 years old, write their name on a piece of parchment, and place it in the Goblet of Fire. And there is an age line to make sure that only people of the age 17 can enter.
What do Fred and George try and do?
They try to put their names in the Goblet of Fire.
By taking what?
An aging potion. And they end up turning into old men. And then they start fighting in the movie. That's so funny. Oh, jeez.
I don't know why they think that would work. Because
Well, Fred and George cause quite a few problems in this book. What are some of the things that they do? Do you remember?
this might be in another book, but they have a shop.
I
was gonna say we haven't gotten quite that far
That's
yet.
several books ahead.
But the start of their plans is mentioned in this book. So they do mention wanting to create Weasley's Whizzing
Wizard.
WWW.
WWW.
So
Weasley's Wizard Weasels, I think.
thank you. Yes. But they've created quite a few different jokes this year. Do you guys remember any of them? What does he do? What do they do to Dudley at the very beginning of the book? What's with the toffee?
I believe it's called tongue engorging toffee. And it causes Dudley's tongue to become this long, snake-like. It's hard to describe.
It was
Anyway.
really long.
Imagine your tongue
Yeah.
getting 10 times bigger.
And they were all freaking out, except all the wizards.
Right.
Except Ron's dad was trying to help him, and the jerseys were like, no, stay away.
Do you remember about the cream cakes?
Oh, the canary cream cakes that turn you into canary and then back into human, as Neville discovers.
Yep. So Fred and George start handing out these cream cakes to people, and they go handing them around, and people are all of a sudden turning into giant feathered canaries. Which wears off after a while because, well, they might be doing some inappropriate things. Fred and George aren't evil, and so they try not to make anything that sticks around for too long. So after we find out that Harry is chosen from the goblet, him and Ron have a falling out. What happened? Why did him and Ron fall out?
So Harry got chosen, and then Ron was mad. I think he was jealous
Mm-hmm.
because he wanted to go and play it, but Ron couldn't.
I think this is some of the beginning of how maybe Ron feels like he's constantly behind Harry's shadow a little bit. You know, Harry had, he was the one that was able to get the Sorcerer's Stone. You know, he was the one in the Chamber of Secrets. That was the Parcel Tongue. And now, you know, you keep moving and Harry's constantly getting all of this attention. And I think Ron, being that this is something he would have liked to do, it's definitely something that it's aggravating. I think all of it just finally started piling up for Ron and just exploded a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
How does their friendship end up getting better?
I would probably say when Harry loses it towards the end and he says, "Here, why don't you wear one of these badges?" Which the badgers say, "Potter stinks." And then the next day after the contest with the dragon, and in the movie, after we hear the shrieking egg, he says, "What the bloody hell was that?" That's when they finally decide to end their feud.
Should we talk about what Hermione's been up to in some of this?
Sure.
So Hermione doesn't have as much in relation to the Triwizard Cup as, you know, maybe Harry or even Ron. But she's definitely got her own little, I guess if you wanted to call it a campaign going on. What's Hermione doing? What's she been up to lately?
Well, she has created a house elf campaign called Spew.
SPEW.
Yes.
And do you remember what that stands for? Otherwise, I got it. It stands for the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare. So what is she trying to do with SPEW?
She's trying to say, "Oh, free the elves."
When
Yeah.
they don't want to be free.
And as Ron says, "Hermione, don't you get it? They like it, okay?" And of course, people join just to shut her up.
So naturally, it doesn't really gain a whole lot of attention at Hogwarts, but she's very avid regardless. What else? So I guess going back to the Triwizard Tournament, then what are their obstacles? What do they do in the Triwizard Tournament? What are some of their events?
Well, the first one, which we just mentioned, was take a golden egg from a dragon, because apparently they are very protective of their eggs. And then second, you had to rescue someone that you apparently held close to you from a group of sirens or mer people that live in the Black Lake. And third, you had to go through a maze, which usually tries to attack you, to retrieve the Triwizard Cup.
So let's talk about how does Harry get out of the first one? What does he summon?
He summons his broom. No, not his broom. Wait, yeah, his broom. And then he flies around the dragon to make the dragon move.
Yep.
And then he grabs the golden egg.
And then in the second task,
I was going to say, what was so important about that egg? How did it play a bigger role moving forward?
Well, it gave a clue as to the next task. And also, it screams, but unless you put it underwater, you can hear, well, it's
mer people language.
Mer people language.
Yeah.
What about who helps him out in the second task? Who gives him what he needs?
Cedric.
Well, Cedric tells him how to open the egg, but who ends up giving him the trick to solving the problem?
Moaning Myrtle, and then I think it's, well, in the movie, it's Neville that gives him the gillyweed.
But in the book, it's our favorite house elf,
Dobby.
Dobby. Dobby comes back. He's a free elf, and he can't get a job because he wants money and time off. Sort of. He doesn't want a lot. He just wants some. So he can't get a job, and so Dumbledore gives him a job in the kitchens at Hogwarts. And then he runs into Harry Potter when Hermione is down there trying to recruit the elves for
Spew.
SPEW. And so Dobby plays a very significant role because in this moment he gives, or in this book, he gives Harry the gillyweed. What does the gillyweed allow him to do? What's he grow?
He grows fin-like feet, webbed hands, and gills along his neck.
So he can breathe underwater.
Yep.
So who does he have to go save?
He has to go save Ron, and
But he saves more.
Yes. So what does he end up doing?
He saves Fleur's sister, but tries to get the other ones too because he was taking the song to
Literally.
Yeah.
So at the end of the song of the Mer people from the Golden Egg, they're told that they've got an hour. If they don't bring the treasure back within an hour, then it's never going to come back. And so Harry thought that meant everybody had gone a little crazy and that all of his friends that were trapped underneath the water were going to die if they took too long to get there. How did they find out about the third task? Who tells them?
I'm trying to remember.
me too.
Mr. Ludo
Bagman.
Ludo Bagman takes him and Crumb into the edge of the woods and basically explains what's going to happen, which causes what kind of problem? What do they think he's doing out in the woods? What do they think he's doing? Ludo Bagman's doing out in the woods. They think he's a
Death Eater.
passing.
Information to Voldemort.
Yep. So does that put him in a positive light?
No, it does not. Just makes him a little more suspicious.
Okay, so we only have a few minutes left.
Can we talk about Barty Crouch?
Let's talk about Barty Crouch,
Yay.
because he plays a really significant role here. So start us off. What about Barty Crouch?
So Barty Crouch was like what was he in?
He was some department head for
Yeah.
the Ministry of Magic.
And then he disappeared because he was like ill. And then so Crumb and Harry went by the woods to talk. And then all of a sudden that Crouch was like just appearing out of nowhere. And he kept talking to this tree, thought it was Percy. Then he came back to life. And then he thought, he's like, I need to talk to Dumbledore. And then, so Harry left, was it Crumb?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was Crumb. With, Crouch. And then when Harry came back with Dumbledore, Crumb was, I think stunned.
Mhm.
And Crouch was gone. And then Mad-Eye Moody went looking in the woods. And then I had him in my nightmare.
So what did we learn about supposedly happened to Barty Crouch's son and his wife?
They died, apparently. But then
It's discovered, we're in the spoiler section, so turn away if you don't know.
So then his son was him, or no, he was Mad-Eye Moody. His Barty Crouch's son was Mad-Eye Moody for most of the year. And then, so can I talk about Mad-Eye Moody now?
Yep, we're in the spoiler section.
Okay. So Mad-Eye Moody, so Barty Crouch's son put Mad-Eye Moody in Mad-Eye Moody's trunk. And then he, So when Dumbledore opened the trunk, when like Barty Crouch's son told all of what happened, Dumbledore opened the trunk, and wait, was it then? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so then they saw Mad-Eye Moody on the floor, well, in the trunk, and freezing and starving. So they were like, we have to rush him to the where they get healed.
Hospital name?
Yeah.
St. Mungo's or at Madame
That was the
Humphreys?
name of it, St. Mungo's. It was one of the two.
I
Okay.
think it was Madame.
Well, was it Madame Humphreys at Hogwarts?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then what else happened?
So does Barty Crouch Jr. survive?
Unfortunately, he doesn't, because Cornelius Fudge, being the idiot that he is, sends the Dementors to perform the kiss. In other words, they suck out
That's
soul, and he becomes an emotionless mass of flesh. And of course, when Dumbledore tells him that Voldemort has returned, he chooses the easy way out and decides not to believe him, which leads to disastrous events, as you will find out in the next book.
Okay. I want to talk about Rita Skeeter.
Okay. So Rita Skeeter is a journalist from Wizards Weekly, I think. Witches Weekly.
Yeah.
Witches Weekly. What's the most annoying part about Rita Skeeter?
She lies.
Every single article
Yep. It's a lie.
is a lie.
Don't believe her.
Basically, she's a gossip columnist like in Miss Skeeter that was just suck your blood.
Okay, let me tell a story. Okay. So Rita Skeeter, she's a writer for wherever it is. And then
Witches Weekly.
so yeah. And then she says she wants to talk to Harry, like all of them. And then when she talks to Harry, she writes about him, but lies, complete lies. I think they met went into a broom closet and they talked, and then she wrote down what was that quill called?
The Quick Quill?
So she put that, and then it started writing when Harry spoke, or something, and I guess it wrote lies.
I think what it did is it just kind of transferred her thoughts instead of having to sit there and write everything down, she could just think it and it would write what she was.
Faster than
Yeah.
you could physically write.
And so she was sitting there and talking about how his eyes were filling with tears and he cried about his parents still, and that he was just super excited to be in the tournament. And then what happens? That's article number 1. What's article number 2?
It's when Rita Skeeter gets the wrong end of a very long stick and sees Hermione hugging Harry. And of course she gets a photograph of them together. And that's when the ball starts rolling. Hermione begins to figure out that she's secretly an unregistered animagus, that she's Beale, kidnaps her in a jar and blackmails her.
So Rita Skeeter can turn into a beetle, right?
Yes.
So yeah. So she can turn into a beetle. And so that's how Hermione figured it out. So she was bugged.
She was bugging people.
Yeah. So then okay.
So then from that we learn another thing. we learned that Hagrid is what?
Half giant.
Half giant. And so, and Hermione supposedly has done what?
Had a fling with Harry.
But did she have an actual fling?
Nope.
No. It's all eyes.
And of course, Harry has one of his episodes, and she implies that he's also mad or insane.
All right, so final spoilers.
Okay.
First death.
The first death, I believe, is Cedric. Is Cedric Diggory the first death?
Well, he's the official first death.
He's
of
the
of the
official
good
first
side.
death. Of the good side. And of course, in the end, there is the graveyard scene where Voldemort returns to power. And then when they begin to fight, their wands connect because they both have the phoenix feather from Fox in their wands. And then the figures come out of Voldemort's wand and end up reassuring Harry and helping him to fight off the Death Eaters. When he grabs Cedric's body, I cannot talk today. When he grabs Cedric's body and the Triwizard Tournament Cup and goes back to Hogwarts.
But what does everybody believe Harry did?
I think they believe that he killed Cedric.
Yeah. Because what curse do they get taught by Mad-Eye Moody?
The killing curse.
The killing curse.
Okay.
So they think that Harry was jealous of Cedric and has used the killing curse to get rid of him.
So there's one thing. So Voldemort, so how they made Voldemort. So they made this potion in this cauldron. And then, so they had to use Harry's blood. So I think, did they cut or just Harry was cut already?
They sliced his arm.
Yeah. So then he, Wormtail, who is a rat and person.
He's Peter Pettigrew from
Yeah.
He's
From the last
Scabbers.
Yeah.
Marauders.
And then he takes Harry's blood and puts it in the cauldron. And then he puts his hand in the cauldron too. But then when Voldemort comes out, Voldemort throws Wormtail against the
Ground or is it tombstone?
tombstone.
One of the two.
And then Wormtail cries, "Why, Master? I thought you were going to give me a chance or something like that." And then Voldemort's like, "Okay." And then he gives Wormtail a new hand, which is stronger.
All right.
Which was a huge part in the last book.
We'll see that later. All right. So that's basically the wrap up of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Join us February 27th for our next discussion on Harry Potter and the
Order of the Phoenix.
which will be very exciting. We hope to see you then.
Bye.
Guys, I'm just going to have to hold on a second.